Welcome to this webinar. I'm Luc Castel, and today the subject is going to be Red Team methodology, how I met your most sensitive data. So this webinar is part of a series of webinar that started, if I remember well, in September 2019, and will continue further on each month on a subject different. So we talked about agile penetration testing, we talked about incident response, and many subjects that, of course, are linked to our business and my team. So just for the presentation, I'm the head of pentest, incident response, security review team at SSL 24/7, CREST accredited pentesters as well. I've been doing penetration testing, incident response for, I guess, 12, 13 years now, and I'm managing a team of 15 engineers dedicated to offensive and defensive security work. As well, and it's related to this presentation, I've been taking part in many red team simulation, which allow me to give you feedback on this and explain you, the common methodology for this kind of exercise. So first, let's start by an introduction on what's a red team. So what's a red team, and what's red team compared to penetration testing? So first thing first, the penetration testing is a simulation. According to my view, it's obviously a gray area. There are people thinking that penetration testing is vulnerability scanning with a bit more. In my opinion, a real penetration testing is something that goes all the way. Including exploitation of the finding to allow to gather a list of pragmatic risks on a scope of work, a perimeter that was defined before starting the penetration testing. A penetration testing, as such, is a simulation of a realistic attack on an internal scope of work, a local area network, an exposed infrastructure from the internet, on the Wi-Fi network, on IoT, on anything that is linked to IT. But it's the penetration testing is limited by its scope of work. So you can say the scope of work is this network, is this range of IP addresses, but it's never everything. A red team, on the other hand, is a more complete assessment, in such that instead of our customer asking for you have to test this and this, they say, I want to know how secure my whole organization is, and I want to know if somebody is able to get, for instance, access to my backup server, access to my client customer database, access to my employee personal data. So they define trophies. So it's kind of an opposite. We reverse the objective, the scope of the assessment, and instead of saying you are going to test that, the red team is not limited to one scope of work, but to everything in the organization, including human. And human is the main part of the red team assessment. I will explain why. And yeah, the goal is to check whether or not the trophies can be obtained or not. So it's like giving, I don't know if the expression exists in English, but a wild card on how on the attacker, on the simulator, on us, and saying you can do everything you can to get this. And of course, there are several scenarios. So we listed a few of them because it's as you can see, this looks like a lot like the APT Advanced Persistent Threat that attackers use. So we gather information, we try to find an entry point from the internet, we try to persist, we try to elevate privilege, try to move laterally, and then once we get everything we want, we exfiltrate the data. So it looks a lot like that, but in the red team case, as it's a complete assessment, it uses that wheel as well. It uses all these scenarios that I'm going, of course, over in the further in the presentation. But each of these parts is included in the rating. Of course, there could be some parts that are avoided on purpose because maybe the person that asks for the simulation doesn't want to have phishing included or doesn't want to have physical access included. But generally, it's everything that can be done within the limit of legality. Of course, there is no such thing as stealing someone's bag in the street or anything. As soon as it goes out of legal limits, of course, it's not possible to do it, or else I would be in jail for a long time. So I will go over each step. So the first one is really important. It's the discovery phase. So discovery phase is also called OSINT, open source intelligence. So open source is basically the sources are the internet, on the internet, and you can gather interesting information on the organism, interesting for an attacker, from an attacker point of view, of course. And this information will help you continue the analysis in the next phase. So of course, the most logical thing to get is an organigram of the organization you are attacking. You want to know who you might target in the phishing step, who you might use as a pretext when you try to physically break in the premises. In the premises, you need to know who you are talking about, what technology they are working on. For instance, on LinkedIn, you can see in the resume, you can see a list of person working on with Juniper firewall, so you can assume that Juniper firewalls will be used. And if you have a vulnerability on it, you can use that in an external penetration test. You gather information on the company, so you can use it's in French, but it's societycompany.com, basically, allowing to get the number of employees, the turnover, how many buildings, the physical address of the company you're targeting. You can use Google Docs. Google Docs are typical Google line that you can use to find information. So for instance, we are trying to find a PDF file that could be confidential, that could contain interesting information regarding the organism we are targeting. And of course, when you're preparing the physical pen test, when you're preparing your approach, how to get in into the company premises, which is I'm gonna say it later, but which is one of the most successful vector of attack as such in a red team. It's used a lot. We are using a lot Google Map, YouTube. You can see the inside of the organism you're targeting through YouTube. When there is a presentation, you can see there is an auxiliary door somewhere. You can see that maybe some passwords printed on the screen or on the post-it that with now that you have really high quality video, you can basically get that information. We've seen some funny image of military in some country with the post-it in the back of the screen. So this could actually be used in a red team scenario. And Google Maps. Google Maps is really a Google Street View is a really strong tool when you deal with physical pen test. You will be able, without going to the on site and risk the fact that you can be identified, you can gather the list of parking entry, anything that could be useful for the attack. You can also use sites and database available on the internet that contain the leaked passwords of the user, and this could allow the attacker to get, for instance, a couple of email and password, and some might still work, allowing the attacker to, for instance, break into mailbox, break into an Office 365 service and gather documents, maybe when you have access to mailbox, you can actually use tool to launch automatic action macro on the Outlook client of the victim and actually get control of his laptop just by having access to his mailbox. But this will get you some accounts if we get you some data to do the external phase. The external phase is basically the external pen test. So you want to gather information about what you can attack. So you're gonna use DNS to enumerate the different site, different IP that you can use. You can use a certificate. Okay, we are set 24/7, so our main business is SSL, but it can actually, so we obviously have a lot of results in that part, but we can use certificate transparency to get additional address, additional virtual host that can link, that are linked to the organism we are targeting, and that could be used as an entry point later. So of course, you can attack the main site, you can attack the institutional website, you can attack the main portal, but the most interesting target would be the auxiliary host that you can find during that subdomain discover. So you can maybe find a forgotten admin area that was not updated for several years that you can break into and then use as a vector of entry. Phishing, of course, phishing is one of the main parts of the red team, because obviously you're testing the human, and it's your way of accessing the internal network, which is basically where things get to start. Because if you have access only to external resources, you're going to be quite limited. But if you are on the internal network, then you can try your attack would be much easier, and you will have a much broader scope of work to target and to do the next phases. But basically, phishing, you can use different tools. We use, for instance, we use GoFish for a portal, but we have built also internal tools to gather either password, username password, or also gather, provide, for instance, an attachment or a link to victim, and the victim, when they click on it, they might see a fake GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar client, but in fact it's our client. And when you launch it, it makes your computer connect to our infrastructure, and through a C2, a command and control server, we're able to take control of the victim and use that as a pivot towards the internal network. So phishing is clearly important part of the red team, but it can also get a spot. So stealth is really crucial part of the red team, because we talked about pen test versus red team. One of the main difference between pen test and red team is that red team include the evaluation of the detection mechanism, of the monitoring of the system, security monitoring of the system and the network, and it's a really good test to know whether or not your SOC, your Security Operations Center, is actually working. Your EDR, your antivirus, each of your security solutions that are meant to detect attacks are working. Because if you're able to do red team and nothing gets spotted during the exercise, there is clearly something wrong with the detection. Either there is nothing, or either there is something wrong with the detection mechanism. So it's like a fire testing. You want to know whether or not all the remediation, the mitigation, the detection mechanism are working. So that's why the notion of stealth is important during a red team, because we don't want to trigger a lot. We want to really go under the radar, and so we won't try anything obvious to try to stay under the radar and be as stealth as possible. So this part is actually we define the perimeter during the OSINT phase, and by enumerating the virtual host and getting information about what to attack. And once we've gathered that, we attack them, and we try to find a way to enter the network through these links. So this is actually what during a pen test, but with the stealth option added. So now we are in a scenario where the phishing didn't work or was out of scope for any reason. The external pen test didn't work because there was nothing exposed on the internet, or because what was exposed was actually well secured. So now we have to get wet. I don't know if it exists, but we have to take some risk and do physical intrusion, because that's the only way to get into the internal network. So of course there is a preparation phase. So we talked about Google Maps and everything. So there's this preparation, but we can also prepare the different material needed for the test. So this, for instance, there is a Wi-Fi part. I'm not going to cover the Wi-Fi part, but obviously before trying to break into the premises, you try to break in through the Wi-Fi, because you can stay on the parking lot and start to pentest from there. So it starts your red team from there. So it happens that some red team stopped at the Wi-Fi part, because we were able to get in on the internal network from the Wi-Fi, and from there we could do everything we wanted. So we didn't have to even break into the premises to do it. That you can see here is it's on the screen as well. It's a crazy PA. So this is this has an antenna, and it allows within a 100-meter range to actually control all the Logitech dongle and inject keyboard key on the network, which allows to basically take control of a computer, because you just launch the key Windows R, then you launch PowerShell, and you launch a payload, an attack through PowerShell, but you have to be within 100-meter range. So I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna do it. So I hope it's gonna work. So the payload I configured. So I'm just going to switch over to my screen. So you might see my colleague Freaks. So iFreaks. So I hope you see it. So I'm sorry, I'm trembling a lot, because I'm holding with my left hand. So the script will launch a window, and we'll try to launch the website ssl247.fr. So I'm launching it. I'm typing my password. Sorry. You don't see my password. And it's starting to scan each connection between a mouse and so I'm obviously moving my mouse to make some traffic. So when you're using a wireless mouse, basically it generates some traffic on a specific frequency, and this frequency is the one that is used by the crazy PA. So we can see here, oh, it's here. This is interesting, because I'm in London, and normally when we use this tool, we can see at least 5 or 6 connections like that, but you have to let it for some time, so we are a bit in a hurry. So we see the good one. I'm targeting it, and now I'm injecting the key, and here you go. You can see on the other laptop, the laptop that has Webwin on it, it launched the website ssl247.fr. Okay, so obviously you don't launch the website ssl247.fr on the real target, but you will launch a PowerShell payload or anything. It will maybe a downloader. It will download a piece of software that could allow an access to the laptop. I have another demonstration with a rubber ducky. Rubber ducky is this. Rubber ducky is a USB. You can actually put it like this in a real case, and it's a USB piece, USB hardware. You put it on so you're breaking into the premises, you're finding some sessions that are unlocked, and you put quickly the rubber ducky in the computer, and it will execute a series of keyboard keys, and this series will be like the jacket attack, like the crazy PA attack, trying to get access, to give access to the victim computer to our infrastructure. Of course, we are using big antenna as well to be able to do the attack from far away. So this kind of antenna, it's a Yagi. It can allow to do some to have some pretty good range, like 100, 200 meters. So even if the organism you're targeting is in like not a city area, but not really coded area, you can stay far and keep going. Okay, so this is actually a inside joke for anyone knowing Game of Thrones, but you have to find some pretext to be able to do the physical pentest, to be able to get into the premises. And on most of our intrusion, the odor method works. So odor, for those who know, sorry, it's a spoiler, but Game of Thrones, I think, is finished since a year now. So I think it's okay to do it. It means hold the door, not hold the door, but basically you just follow someone entering the premises, and you say, okay, sorry, I forgot my badge, or I'm on the phone, I'm on a hurry, and you go through the person at the entrance, and that's how you get it. You can also use other techniques, like we can see lock picking, social engineering. So you can disguise yourself, and depending on where you are going, trying to wear helmet, wear headset if it's an industrial environment. You can draw some pretext, maybe create an interview request or commercial request meetings, and after the meeting that you can fake or you don't go to, yeah, continue your entry. So you've been able to get into the premises. You don't want to stay there for too long because you will get detected. So you want to find a way to get access, to keep your access to the internal network, because obviously once you will be in the premises, you will have access to you will be able to plug something and to get access to the internal network. So you try to find some persistence, and for that you can use physical implants. And physical implants, for instance, is this kind of tool, which is it's a land turtle. It's also on the screen. Land turtle, it costs less than 100 quid, and it allows either through 3G, so through data, GSM data, and either through the actual network, to plug in between the network cable of a computer and the computer itself. So you basically go find a computer that is unused, so during lunch break, for instance, and you plug that. So it's more efficient when it's not a laptop but a fixed workstation. Same goes for this. This is an Intel NUC, so it's basically a mini computer. Raspberry Pi can be used as well. Now they're getting a bit more powerful, so it could be used as well. And basically, it will have all the attackers, all the pen testing tools on it, and it will, once connected, the land turtle will create a bridge between the attackers' infrastructure, so our infrastructure, and the internal network where it's plugged in. And it's really, really stealthy. It doesn't normally get detected because it's just plugged in on the back of a computer, and it allows to get an internal access. So you just have to plug that in. You have an accomplice that verify that is connected on the infrastructure and verify that, okay, there's been a connection, and it allows to once the accomplice acknowledge that the connection has been successful, you can just go back, clear the area, and continue your attack from somewhere else. So when we do red team assessment, we're not generally unknown. We are 2 or 3 consultants. We generally don't take hotel, but rent an Airbnb, for instance. So we basically continue the test, continue the red team from the Airbnb, which is our base, or we can even go home and continue from the office. But we have to assume that this peripheral, these devices are going to get removed, are going to get detected soon by the security team, so we don't have to waste time by traveling. So once it has access and we can get internal access from the internet, we try to go as fast as possible to get as much possible data as we want. But basically, once that is plugged in, game is it's probably going to be over in 1 or 2 days. Okay, you can get hardware persistence, but you also can get software persistence. So you can use PowerShell like or tool Empire or Metasploit to get access to an unlock session and implement a software malware that will get you access same way the Land Turtle did, but from a software point of view. And it can allow you to get an remote access to the internet network as well. So now you have access to the internal network. You are maybe in the VoIP sector, you are maybe in some other area on some other network, but you're not where you want to be because you want to be in the administration area, the administration VLAN, for instance. So you have to move laterally. When you move laterally, it means that you want to get from your access to another server, which will allow you to get to another server, and so on until you're where you want to. And for that, you are using different tools. So we're showing just a few of them linked to SMB. So SMB is linked to Windows, yes, but this obviously can be done on Linux as well. So this phase will include trying to find an entry point, most possible entry point you can find, and access to servers, access to workstation until you have the access you want. Once you have access to the machine, you do this cycle of obtaining administrator access on the machine and then gathering all the accounts connected to the machine. So you use tools like Mimikatz, for instance, which is also a really popular tool amongst malware creator or attackers that will basically allow you on Windows machine to dump all the in clear text the password of all connected session. You are going to gather files, everything that can be used to access and to go where you want, and basically to obtain the maximum privilege, the most important privileges you want to have. Of course, you're going to use exploit, you're going to use entry point. So just an example of all the NSA toolkit that was leaked in 2017 and used amongst all, used by WannaCry. That's what created the WannaCry crisis, for instance. But basically, you're going to pave your way through where you want to be. And when you have all the access you wanted to have, so you have access to the most critical database of the company, then you are going to need to get the data first that you wanted to get, and then exfiltrate it. Some trophies can also be completely physically linked. So for instance, some trophies can be access to a specific data center, or access to a specific server into the data center, or access to the CFO office, and maybe drop later or steal something from steal the CFO laptop, for instance. Could be any trophies. But once you get the information you want, you also have to prove that you will be able to exfiltrate it, because the information is still on your victim network. So you have to exfiltrate it, and for that there could be many ways. You can send it by email. You can use messaging like WhatsApp or Skype. You can exfiltrate it through the tunnel you created by using the Land Turtle, for instance. So there could be lots of ways to exfiltrate information, but you still have to do that stealthily, especially if you've not been caught yet. You don't want the last phase to be the one where you get detected, because basically there are some companies that's a good thing that prevent exfiltration or that detect exfiltration, because it might generate several terabytes of traffic, might generate some triggers, some alerts. So it could also be good to to prevent that by exfiltrating, but through a long period of time. Okay, I think we went through everything we wanted to talk about, and now I think it's a good time for question. So I should have told you, but if you have some question, you could have typed it on the question area of the go to webinar clients. So it's still time to write some question if you're interested. But basically, so I'm going to go over the question. So there are a few. So what about blue team? So we're talking a lot about red team, but you might have heard of blue team. Basically, in the military lingo, there is the red team, blue team comes from the military. And red team is the offensive team, and blue team is the defensive team. And there is no advantage of just using a red team for nothing. The blue team, it's generally the team that is in the security operations center, that is in charge of remediation, that is in charge of the security and implementing the detection patterns. There is no way to have a red team assessment without having a blue team, because the offensive alone, offensive assessment and everything is nothing without the security behind, and the security IT is a really wide scope, really wide area, and offensive security is just one small part of it. But of course, the blue team is really important. So it's not the subject of this webinar, but you can even talk about purple team. So purple team is when you have a person in charge of red team doing the red team assessment, finding something, and then going over to the blue team and saying, okay, I've been able to do that, go through that point, and have you been able to detect me on that part and that? If the blue team hasn't been, then the red team help the blue team implementing new detection pattern. Then it goes back into red team phase and elevates the level to get in, because they get caught if they wouldn't, and then they go back to the blue team. It's a cycle. It's really productive cycle, because it allows to get from that level to that level to that level until you have a really high mature security level. So I'm just have time for one last question. How many days on average would it take for a red team exercise? So, and contrary to penetration test, we don't base the number of days on the scope of work, but more on the trophies that are defined. So if the trophies is really hard to get, so let's say, for instance, implement a backdoor on the Visa network to be able to steal wire transfer, to steal credit card transfer, a really tough objective, then it's gonna need lots more day than getting into the data center of a small or medium business, for instance. So we base our quotation, we base the number of days dedicated to a team on the objective, and of course on the size of the organism we are targeting. A multinational will need more time, because they could be more vector, more ways to get results. But a bare minimum of 15 days working days, not with one consultant. Generally, at least there is need of two, is the minimum for this kind of exercise, to have a complete view of what can be done. But as I always say as well, it's not an exhaustive exercise. The goal is to find maybe one or maybe more paths an attacker can take, but it's not to identify all the paths. It's really to test the detection, to test, of course, the security. And if you get blocked at one point, then you get to the next point and then you do this exercise a lot until you don't find any path to get in. Okay, so thank you all, and I hope I'm going to see you next month for the next webinar. Thank you.